What if I told you that the very thing you've been searching for your entire life has never left you? What if the power you've been begging heaven to send down is already residing in the deepest chambers of your soul? What if every prayer you've whispered into the darkness was answered before you even spoke it? What if you've been walking around carrying the greatest treasure in existence, yet living like a pauper? What if the moment you truly understand this truth, everything about how you move through this world will fundamentally shift forever? There comes a breaking point in every person's journey when the facade crumbles, when you can no longer pretend that the hollow ache in your chest isn't real, when you can no longer ignore that persistent whisper echoing through the corridors of your mind, calling you to something greater. It's not that you lack faith. It's not that you're unintelligent. It's not that you weren't meant for extraordinary things. The problem is far simpler and far more profound than any of that. You've forgotten who lives inside you. Most people don't walk through life soulless. They walk through life directionless, disconnected, having forgotten about the divine flame that burns within their very essence. They drag themselves through each day, searching externally for what has always existed internally. They beg for signs, plead for strength, hunt for light as if they were nothing but shadows. But they're not shadows. The tragedy is they've been programmed to look outward, to depend on others, to place their faith in external structures, completely forgetting that true power doesn't impose itself from the outside. True power ignites from within. God doesn't inhabit some distant corner of the universe. He doesn't live in some unreachable celestial dome. He lives in you. Yes, in you. In the deepest recesses of your soul, in the quietest chambers of your consciousness. As Romans chapter 8 verse 11 declares, "And if the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his spirit who lives in you." Do you see it? You're not waiting for God. He's already there. Everything begins to transform the day you stop living like a spiritual beggar, the day you stop pleading for guidance and start walking like someone who has already been guided. This isn't about arrogance. This is about remembering. This is about reconnecting with the eternal within you, because you don't need new signs when you yourself have been a sign this entire time. Napoleon Hill understood this with crystal clarity when he wrote, "Faith is the starting point of all achievement. Faith is the eternal elixir which gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought." But that faith isn't just some vague feeling floating around in your emotions. It's a concrete decision. It's living as if you already possess the certainty, even when your senses scream otherwise. Because the most transformative truth is this: you're not broken, you're sleeping. And this message is your alarm clock. Society has convinced you that you're insufficient. It has bombarded you with criticisms, comparisons, and labels. It has made you believe that you need to be saved, corrected, and repaired. But the divine truth is radically different. You don't need to be saved. You need to be remembered. Because what you are was deposited within you before you ever arrived in this world. God's voice doesn't shout. It doesn't compete with the noise of the world. It whispers, and if you're filled with distraction, with fear, with foreign voices, you won't hear it. That's why I'm telling you, create silence. Turn off the noise. Remove all external demands for a moment and listen to what has always been there. That thought telling you there's something more for me isn't ego. It isn't fantasy. It's truth. It's God reminding you that you didn't come here to survive. You came to manifest what was already given to you. You're not incomplete. You're not lost. You just need to align. When you remember who lives within you, your steps change. Your language changes. Your energy changes. Your entire atmosphere changes. Because you no longer walk by sight, you walk by conviction. You no longer speak from need, you speak from abundance. You no longer act from desperation, you act from presence. We've been trained since childhood to depend on the external world, to follow structures, formulas, and instructions from others. They told us we first had to have everything figured out, that we needed to feel ready, that we required more experience, more validation, more resources. And without realizing it, we became slaves to waiting. We wait for signs. We wait for permission. We wait to feel sufficiently prepared. But that prolonged waiting isn't patience. It's distraction. It's a silent strategy that extinguishes your fire little by little, like a candle slowly running out of oxygen. Because while you postpone your purpose, while you say not yet, there's a part of you that grows cold, a part that knows the time has already come, but has been silenced by your fears. The most dangerous thing isn't failure. The most dangerous thing is believing you're not ready. Who told you that? Who made you think you had to have everything under control before you could begin? It wasn't God. It was the world. It was the noise. It was the culture that taught you to doubt yourself. Because listen to me carefully. You were never alone. You were never weak. You never lacked the calling. They just made you forget what you carry inside. As Psalm 46 verse 1 proclaims, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. It doesn't say when you're ready. It doesn't say when you deserve it. It says ever-present help, which means He's already with you, waiting for you to remember. And when you finally do, when you finally remember that God lives in you, something shifts. Not outside, inside. Your thoughts are no longer the same. Your energy stops depending on motivation. Your step becomes firmer, even though fear is still there. Because you don't need fear to disappear in order to advance. You only need to obey that inner voice that doesn't shout, but never makes mistakes. Napoleon Hill wrote, "The starting point of all achievement is burning desire, but not just any desire, not the superficial desire that vanishes at the first obstacle." He was talking about that internal fire that births from your spirit, that needs no validation, that doesn't beg, that doesn't negotiate. That desire is the echo of heaven within you. It's God telling you, go, even if you tremble, walk, even if you don't understand everything. Because true faith isn't the absence of fear. True faith is advancing with trembling, with tears, with uncertainty, but without stopping. It's what the prophets called obedience. Not blind obedience, but conscious, voluntary, deep obedience. The kind that doesn't need guarantees because it has conviction. When you align with the divine, your life stops revolving around what's missing and begins orbiting around what you already have. And what you have is sufficient. What has already been planted within you doesn't need more proof. It only needs space to manifest. But for that, you have to do something radical. Stop looking outside for what was always inside. Stop waiting for a sign when you yourself were sent as one. Stop negotiating with doubt. Stop making deals with insecurity. And start moving like someone who has already been activated by heaven. You don't need to shout to be heard by God. He already hears you before you open your mouth. You don't need to convince the universe to bless you. The universe was already aligned in your favor from the moment you were conceived with purpose. As Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10 declares, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." Before I continue, I need you to pause for just a moment. If what you're hearing right now is stirring something deep within your spirit, if you're feeling that familiar fire starting to kindle in your chest, then you're part of a family that believes in the impossible. Hit that subscribe button not because I'm asking you to, but because you recognize that this message was meant for you today. And in the comments below, I want you to write just 3 words. I am ready. Because when you declare it, heaven hears it. When you declare it, everything shifts. Don't just listen to this message. Become part of this movement of people who refuse to live beneath their divine potential. Do you see it? There's already a path laid out. But the map doesn't reveal itself completely from the beginning. It reveals itself step by step as you walk, not when you feel ready, but when you decide to advance despite not feeling prepared. And that's where everything changes. When you say yes with a trembling voice, when you take that step without having all the answers, when you become available, not perfect. That yes carries a weight that heaven recognizes. That yes is the language of those who have awakened. Do you know what happens when you stop acting like a victim? Everything begins to change. Your way of speaking changes. Your way of looking changes. Even your physical posture changes. You no longer move by reaction. You move by conviction. Your body stops reflecting fear and starts radiating firmness, because remembering who you are has more power than any ritual, course, or technique. And I'm not talking about believing it in a superficial way. I'm not talking about repeating empty affirmations or pretending confidence. I'm talking about an internal transformation that's born the day you decide to live according to the truth that dwells within you, even though your hands still shake. Because authentic faith doesn't wait for emotions, it manifests in decisions. When you say, "I am available," something activates, not in the external world, but in the spiritual realm. Because that simple act of availability, when you stop negotiating with fear, when you release the habit of asking permission, when you choose to move even without feeling ready, unlocks what heaven had reserved for you. It's not magic. It's alignment. The coherence between what you believe and how you walk is the portal that activates divine power. And that power doesn't need proof. It doesn't respond to perfection or logic. As 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9 states, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Do you realize you don't need to hide your fears or disguise your failures? You only need to walk, even while trembling, knowing that God's grace is sufficient to sustain you. And when you do that, when you finally remember who lives within you, something profound reorders itself. Your steps stop being hesitant. Your voice no longer seeks to impress. Now it transmits certainty. Your energy stops dispersing. Now it's pure direction. You look different. You behave differently. And not because you became more spiritual, but because you're aligned. What used to make you stumble now strengthens you. What used to make you cry now edifies you. And the most surprising thing of all, you begin to honor silence. You no longer run from it. You no longer need noise to feel alive. You no longer rush to fill every minute of your day with distractions. Now you can close your eyes and find in silence what noise never gave you. Presence. When others talk about you, you no longer crumble. Now you smile. Not because you're indifferent, but because you know something they've forgotten. God is with you. And whoever walks with God, even though they criticize him, doesn't stop. Because his faith doesn't depend on passing motivation. His faith is a state of consciousness. As Napoleon Hill used to say, it doesn't matter how slowly you go as long as you don't stop. And that can only be said by someone who has decided to walk in their purpose without depending on applause or understanding from others. You stop moving like someone who needs to fill voids, and you start moving like someone who has already been filled, not because everything is resolved, but because you're no longer searching outside for what always lived inside. In that moment, the universe responds. Doors open, the right people appear. Direction becomes clearer, not by luck, by coherence, because the one who walks with inner power attracts what vibrates at that same frequency. They don't need to chase. They don't need to shout. Their energy, their silence, their walk, everything communicates a truth that cannot be hidden. God never left. He was just waiting for you to remember. And when that memory becomes real, there's no external force that can stop you, because you're no longer a diminished version of what you were called to be. You've become a channel, a reflection, living evidence that the divine can inhabit the human. Fear is not your enemy. Though they've made you believe it, fear didn't come to destroy you. Fear is simply a signal, a call warning you that you're standing in front of something great. But here's the problem. They taught you that you had to wait to feel ready, that you had to wait for the perfect moment, emotional balance, external validation, the celestial sign. And so, many have lived an entire lifetime waiting for a moment that never comes. But the moment doesn't arrive when everything falls into place. The moment arrives when you decide to obey, not because you understand everything, but because you trust. To obey without guarantees, to obey even when your voice trembles, to obey even when your eyes see nothing clear. That's true faith, not a faith of words, but an embodied faith. As Abraham demonstrated in Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8, by faith Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Do you see it? He didn't wait to understand the map. He didn't wait to have everything figured out. He left because he was called. And that's spiritual obedience, acting in darkness, knowing that light will come as you walk. What destroys fear isn't information, it's action. There's no positive affirmation that works without movement. There's no prayer that takes effect if it's not accompanied by disposition. Spiritual obedience doesn't wait for emotion, it only waits for will. It doesn't feed on motivation, but on alignment. The one who obeys doesn't ask for guarantees. They simply recognize the internal instruction and follow it with humility. Napoleon Hill was emphatic when he stated, "Indecision is the thief of opportunity." Every time you postpone, every time you say tomorrow, you're stealing strength from your purpose. And the worst part is, you don't even notice. Because procrastination doesn't hurt immediately. It's a silent poison, a poison that makes you sleep while your destiny stands waiting. The person who waits to feel worthy becomes paralyzed. The one who waits to feel ready gets delayed. But the one who acts with what they already know, with what they carry in their soul, with the little or much they have, that person becomes a channel. Do you want to know who changes the world? It's not the strongest, it's not the wisest, it's not the most admired. It's the one who obeys when everything inside them screams, "I can't." But something deeper, something that can't be explained with logic, tells them, "Continue." That something is God speaking to you, not in shouts, not in thunder, but in that gentle certainty that vibrates right in the center of your chest. And if you've felt it, you can no longer keep pretending it's not real. You can no longer keep hiding behind excuses. You don't need others to understand it. You only need to say yes even if you're afraid. Yes even if you feel unprepared. Yes because you know you were called. And that yes changes everything, because it's not a mental yes. It's a yes that opens doors, a yes that moves heaven, a yes that not only changes your story, but begins to affect everything around you. When a person is aligned, they don't need to announce it. Their presence says it all. They enter a room and the air changes. Not because they're the loudest, but because their silence has weight. Their gaze is firm. Their step doesn't hesitate. Their voice doesn't seek to impress. They speak little, but every word has direction. They no longer need to win debates. They no longer react to chaos. They no longer run after applause. They walk with their own rhythm, as if they already knew where they were going. And do you know why? Because they know who guides them. They don't need external certainties because they trust the internal compass that God placed in their soul. That compass doesn't fail. That compass doesn't activate with likes or with approval from others. It activates with silence, with presence, with faithfulness to what one already knows. An aligned life isn't a life without problems. It's a life with purpose. It's not a life without doubts. It's a life where conviction overcomes confusion. Because whoever walks with God inside no longer negotiates their peace. They're no longer available for everything. Not out of pride, but out of reverence. Reverence for their energy, reverence for their time, reverence for their mission. If this message has reached into the depths of your soul and awakened something that's been sleeping, if you feel that divine stirring that confirms you were meant to hear these words today, then you're family. You're part of this community of believers who refuse to accept anything less than their divine inheritance. Subscribe to this channel because you recognize your tribe when you see it. And before you leave, share your breakthrough moment in the comments. Tell us about that time when you felt God moving in your life. Tell us what you're believing Him for right now. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. We're not just building a channel here. We're building a movement of people who live like heaven is real and God is present. Your voice matters in this conversation. If the power you carry within is so great, why don't you feel it sometimes? Why, if God already dwells in you, are there days when He seems so distant? The answer is harsh, but necessary. It's not that the power has left, it's that you've covered it. You've buried it under learned fears, habits that drain your soul, foreign voices that you repeated so much they became your own. You've buried the divine under tons of doubts, comparisons, judgments, and activities that empty your spirit. And then you wonder why you don't feel clarity, why you don't receive direction. But how is God's voice going to speak if it's buried under so much noise? The problem isn't lack of divine presence, it's excess of human distraction. Confusion doesn't come from lack of guidance, but from a saturated channel. As Psalm 46 verse 10 declares, "Be still and know that I am God." Do you see? God doesn't impose Himself. God doesn't interrupt. God waits for space, and that space isn't created automatically. You have to make it. You have to release what doesn't nourish. You have to fast emotionally. Fast from empty conversations, from meaningless comparisons, from relationships that only absorb your energy without giving you anything back. Fast from the judgment of others that you accepted as truth, from the "you can't" that someone told you and you recorded as identity. Create silence. Turn off the world. Close social media. Silence notifications. Not to escape, but to return to yourself. Because the soul doesn't shout, the soul whispers. And if everything in your life is full, there's no room for the sacred. Sometimes the channel of connection with the divine isn't broken. It's simply occupied. Occupied by expectations that aren't yours, by routines without soul, by information without purpose, by external pressure disguised as goals, occupied by opinions you never asked for but allowed anyway. And while all that fills you, you can't feel what already dwells within you. That's why you need to clean. Not your physical house, but your internal house, your mind, your thoughts, your emotions. You need to close doors, some with love, others with firmness. And not because you're bad, but because you're ready for something greater. Biblical wisdom is clear in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. If you don't take care of your energy, if you don't protect your attention, if you're not intentional about what you allow in, you're giving away your power without realizing it. And the universe can't fill what's already saturated. Heaven can't move in the midst of emotional chaos. God can't manifest in a consciousness occupied by confusion. Not because He doesn't want to, but because God is order, not noise. God is clarity, not saturation. God is presence, not urgency. Take 15 minutes a day to do nothing. Don't pray, don't read, don't produce. Just be. In silence, you with yourself, you with Him. Breathe. Listen. Not to what your fear says, not to what others say. Listen to what only reveals itself when you turn off the noise of the world and turn on the language of the Spirit, because that's where God speaks loudest. Not because He raises the volume, but because you lowered yours, because you made space, because you released the unnecessary, because you recognize that you don't need more burden, you need more consciousness, not more activities, but more intention. And once you clean that channel, you start to feel again. You start to hear that inner voice that was always there, but you weren't available. The power didn't leave, It was just waiting for room. As Napoleon Hill said, the subconscious mind works most effectively when it is calm, when it is free from confusion and noise. And that's what no one told you. That your connection with the divine doesn't need emotional noise. It needs vibrational space. So guard your time like it was gold. Guard your energy like it was fire. Be selective with your environments. Not out of arrogance, but out of spiritual responsibility, because if you don't protect what you carry inside, no one else will. And that fire, if not cultivated, goes out. You're not lost, you're not dry, you're not alone, you're just overly occupied. And the first act of faith today isn't to pray louder or ask with more urgency. It's to make space to receive, space to perceive, space to remember what never left. You don't need to feel invincible. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to be free from doubts. You only need to take the first step, one. Even though your voice trembles, even though your heart races, even though your mind says it's not the time. Because the most powerful thing you can do today isn't to wait for more light. It's to obey the light you already have. You don't need to shout who you are. You don't need to convince anyone that you were called. You don't need to prove your worth or justify your purpose. You only have to walk like someone who already remembered. Every step you take from conviction, even if it's silent, is a spiritual declaration, a profound affirmation that you don't walk alone. An affirmation that doesn't need applause or recognition or even understanding. Because whoever is aligned with God doesn't walk to be seen, they walk to leave a legacy. And it's that coherent walking that transforms atmospheres. It doesn't make noise, but it shakes. It doesn't impose, but it remains. Because when you walk with purpose, your entire life becomes testimony, a wordless sermon, a lit lamp that illuminates more through its consistency than through its volume. As Matthew chapter 5, verse 16 proclaims, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." It doesn't say, "Let them hear your arguments." It says, "Let them see your deeds." Because the power of a coherent life is more persuasive than any speech. The world is saturated with words, with theories, with opinions. But what's scarce is people who live what they preach. People who inspire simply by how they move, by how they remain firm without needing to raise their voice. People whose energy transmits peace, direction, reverence. Imagine entering a place and not having to explain anything, not out of arrogance, but because your mere presence communicates clarity, because your gaze doesn't flee, your step doesn't tremble, your voice doesn't waver. Because you've reached that point where you're no longer trying to convince anyone, you're inhabiting your calling. And if you still wonder, is this the moment? Let this answer resonate in your entire being. Yes, it's now. Not because you feel it, but because the calling has already been made. And now all that remains is for you to respond with your steps. You don't need more signs. You are the sign. You don't need another confirmation. Your own restlessness is the confirmation. Because the soul never gets restless by accident. The soul gets restless when it's time to move, when it's time to grow, when the eternal is knocking at your door. And you know it. You've felt it. You're feeling it now. So don't stop. Don't look back. Don't make excuses. Don't negotiate with fear. Walk like the answer you always were. You don't need to promise anything. You don't have to convince anyone. Just walk like someone who already remembered, like someone who was already sent, like someone who already heard enough and is now ready to live what they were designed to manifest. Every step you take will be a silent prayer. Every action you take will be an act of faith. Every time you advance, even though your voice trembles, you'll be opening paths for those who come behind. You're not alone. You never were. You just needed to remember. And today, as this word ends, I want you to engrave this in your soul. God lives in me, and it shows. God chose me, and I respond. I don't walk to seek, I walk to reflect. My life is no longer an excuse, it's evidence. And from now on, every step I take confirms what heaven has already decreed. I am a channel, I am called, I am sent, and I live it with honor, with obedience, with fire. Amen.